Every few decades, some genius engineer decides pistons are old news. They promise smoother power, higher revs, less weight, an engine that will change motorcycling forever. Sounds amazing, right? Wrong. Every one of these designs hit the same wall. Reality caught up, physics crushed their dreams, and bad luck finished the job. From the 1920s to the 2000s, inventors threw fortunes at engines they promised to kill the piston. Wankel rotaries, turbines, steam power, orbital combustion. You name it, somebody tried it. And every time these radical engines crashed harder than a beginner on his first Hayabusa. And so, today we're counting down the top 10 motorcycle engines that tried and failed to replace pistons. Let's get right into it. Number 10. BSA rotary prototypes. Before Norton made rotary motorcycles famous, there was BSA, and their rotary project was supposed to save the dying British motorcycle industry. In 1969, BSA was watching the Japanese absolutely destroy them in the marketplace. They needed something radical, something the Japanese didn't have, so they hired a young Cambridge graduate engineer named David Garside to explore Wankel engines for motorcycles. Garside's team started with a Fichtel and Sachs single-rotor air-cooled engine, the same one used in snowmobiles. It made just 18 horsepower, which was pathetic. But Garside was clever. He completely redesigned the intake system. You see, Sachs cooled the rotor by routing intake air through its center. Smart for cooling, but terrible for power. The incoming fuel mixture got heated up, which killed combustion efficiency. Garside routed the air through the rotor to cool it, then passed it through a plenum chamber to cool back down before entering the combustion chamber. Brilliant, really. The result was 32 horsepower. That's 85% more power from the exact same engine. Suddenly, this thing looked seriously promising. They installed it in a BSA B25 Starfire frame as proof of concept. It was reliable, incredibly smooth, but still underpowered. So in 1973, Garside and legendary designer Burt Hopwood created a twin-rotor version. 588cc total displacement, nearly 70 horsepower, about twice what the original twin-cylinder Triumph Bandit engine made. They installed it in various chassis, a Triumph Bandit frame, a BSA A65 frame, even a Norton Commando frame. Each time testing, refining, improving. In July 1972, BSA's board of directors voted to buy a full Wankel license from Audi NSU. This was happening. BSA was going all in on rotaries, but then everything fell apart. BSA was already in financial catastrophe. The rotary development was immediately stalled. By 1973, BSA was dead. The British government forced a merger, creating Norton Villiers Triumph. BSA was literally dropped from the company name even though they'd owned Triumph since 1951. The rotary project survived only because Dennis Poor, the new NVT chairman, believed in it. He transferred the program to Norton. Garside's team kept working, but it was no longer a BSA project. BSA's rotary prototypes proved the concept could work. They solved the cooling problems, they doubled the power, they built functional motorcycles, but they never sold a single one to the public. The company collapsed before production could start. Number 9. The Sarich Orbital Engine. Let's jump to 1972 in Perth, Australia. An engineer named Ralph Sarich decides he's going to completely reinvent the engine, and his idea was an orbital engine. Instead of pistons going up and down like normal, you'd have a prismatic-shaped piston that orbits around the center of the engine without actually rotating. Think of it like a Wankel rotary, but fundamentally different. The rotor didn't spin around, it just orbits in a circle. On paper, this design was absolutely brilliant. Smaller package, lighter weight, fewer moving parts to brake, less friction between components, more power per litre of displacement. Sarich got serious backing from BHP and Australian government grants. He spent over a decade developing this engine. By 1982, they had a 3.5-litre engine running just as well as comparable gasoline car engines of the day. But here's where it all fell apart. The orbital engine had absolutely massive combustion chamber heat losses. The surface-to-volume ratio was terrible, so it bled energy like a sieve. Also, sealing the chambers was a complete nightmare. The engine had 8 corner seals and really long sealing paths. Keeping pressure contained in those chambers was near on impossible. After 10 years and millions of dollars invested, Sarich and his team finally realized the orbital engine itself was a complete dead end. But here's the interesting twist to the story. While desperately trying to fix the engine, Sarich invented something else entirely. A direct fuel injection system that used compressed air to atomize fuel into a superfine mist. That system, called the orbital combustion process, actually worked really well. They pivoted hard and fast. Instead of selling orbital engines, they started licensing the fuel injection technology to 2-stroke engines for motorcycles, outboards, and snowmobiles. Mercury Marine used it in their Optimax outboards. Aprilia used it in their Ditech scooters. It's still used today in military drones. So the orbital engine completely failed, but the technology that came out of trying to save it, that actually succeeded. Number 8. The MZ-KKM-175W. Here's something most people don't know about Wankel motorcycles. The very first one wasn't Japanese. It wasn't made by Hercules in West Germany. It was East German. Back in 1960, behind the Iron Curtain, engineers at Motorrad Schopau, known as IFA or MZ, built the world's first Wankel motorcycle, the KKM-175W. MZ was absolutely convinced rotaries would replace their two-stroke piston engines in both motorcycles and the infamous Trabant 3-cylinder two-stroke car. They bought a license from NSU in 1960 and got to work immediately. Within just 3 months, they had a working prototype, a 175cc water-cooled single-rotor Wankel engine mounted in an FIA chassis that originally housed a flat twin two-stroke. The development team included engineer Anton Lupe, designer Erich Mackes, and research engineer Roland Schuster. The engine made 24 horsepower. That's literally double what their comparable 175cc MZ two-stroke made. This was genuinely promising. They tested it extensively, put over 23,600 miles on that prototype. That's serious development work. In 1965, they built a second prototype using an air-cooled 175cc single rotor making 25 horsepower, more than their ES250 trophy engine that was supposed to be bigger and better. So what went wrong? First major problem, rotor tip seal failures. The seals at the corners of the triangular rotor kept wearing out. They tried different materials, different thicknesses, different designs. Nothing worked reliably enough. Second problem, heat. These engines ran dangerously hot, way hotter than their existing two-strokes. Cooling them properly would require massive redesigns and expensive materials. Third problem, cost. MZ was an East German state-owned company with limited resources. They couldn't afford the endless testing and material changes needed to make rotaries reliable. The costs kept mounting. By 1969, MZ let their NSU license expire. The project was dead. They went back to building two-stroke piston engines because those actually worked and didn't make the company bankrupt. Number 7. Kawasaki X99. Kawasaki almost joined the rotary party. In 1972, they showed a prototype at a major motorcycle show, the X99, twin-rotor design, 900cc, 85 horsepower. They bought the production rights to Wankel engines. They were completely serious about this. And then they carefully looked at the numbers, development costs, emissions requirements, fuel economy, reliability issues. They watched Suzuki struggle desperately with the RE5. They saw Yamaha kill their rotary project, and they walked away. No production, no official explanation. The X99 completely disappeared. Kawasaki decided to stick with what already worked. 2 strokes for small bikes, 4 strokes for big bikes. The Z1900 was already dominating the market, so why risk everything on completely unproven technology? Number 6. Yamaha RZ201. This entry is relatively quick because it never actually made it past the prototype stage. In 1972, Yamaha showed a twin-rotor Wankel motorcycle at the Tokyo Motor Show, the RZ201. It had a 660cc water-cooled engine making about 66 horsepower. It weighed 485 pounds. It looked genuinely clean, modern, really promising. And then Yamaha carefully looked at what Suzuki was doing with their RE5. They saw the massive costs involved, the engineering complexity, the fuel economy problems, and they quickly killed the entire project. No official explanation, no press release. The RZ201 just completely disappeared. One industry report says Yamaha realized a thirsty rotary wouldn't work in a fuel-conscious world. This was right after the 1973 oil crisis hit. Gas prices were skyrocketing everywhere. Consumers wanted serious efficiency. A rotary that guzzled fuel? Absolutely terrible timing. Yamaha decided to stick with 2 strokes and 4 strokes instead. Proven technology, reliable technology, stuff they could actually sell successfully. Smart move on their part. Number 5. MTT Turbine Superbike. Now we get to the absolute maddest engine on this entire list. A literal helicopter turbine, strapped to a motorcycle frame, actually sold to the public. Marine Turbine Technologies, or MTT, is a Louisiana company that builds turbines for boats and industrial fire suspension systems. In the late 1990s, the CEO Ted McIntyre decided they should build a motorcycle because, apparently, why not? They hired Christian Chevert, a legendary custom builder, and by 1999 they had a working prototype, the MTT Y2K Turbine Superbike, powered by a Rolls-Royce Allison 250 gas turbine, the exact same engine used in Bell 206 helicopters. This thing made 320 horsepower at 52,000 RPM. Top speed was 227 miles per hour. Jay Leno bought the second one ever made. He said it scared him half to death every time he rode it. He also said the exhaust was so hot it literally melted the bumper of a car right behind him at a red light. So what's the actual problem here? Why is it on this list? Because it's not a viable production motorcycle at all. It's basically a science experiment for extremely rich people. The MTT proved turbines can technically work in a motorcycle, but practically speaking, not even close to viable. Number 4. Hercules W2000. Alright, now we're getting into the rotary bikes that actually made it to production. And the first production Wankel motorcycle ever actually sold? That honor goes to West Germany. The Hercules W2000, first shown to the public in 1970, and production finally started in 1974. Hercules was a bicycle and motorcycle company based in Nuremberg. They'd been around since 1886. By the 1960s, they were owned by Fichtel & Sachs, the biggest two-stroke engine maker in Europe. Sachs had bought a license to build Wankel engines way back in 1960. They'd been successfully using them in snowmobiles and power tours. So in the late 1960s, they thought, why not motorcycles? The W2000 used a 294cc single-rotor air-cooled Wankel engine. It made somewhere between 27 to 32 horsepower depending on the production year. Not much power, but rotaries fire once per revolution, so you multiply that displacement by 2 for fair comparison. Call it a 588cc equivalent. It had a 6-speed gearbox, regular chain drive, both electric and kickstart. Top speed was around 90 miles per hour, not bad for the era, but here's where the design got really weird. The engine was mounted longitudinally, running along the bike's centerline. Power went through a 90-degree bevel gear to reach the transmission, and to keep it properly cool, they bolted a giant axial fan to the front of the engine. The thing looked like a turbine intake. Handling? Smooth and graceful. Vibration? Almost completely none. Rotaries are incredibly silky smooth, but sales were absolutely abysmal. First issue, the price. It cost as much as a 750cc 4-cylinder Japanese bike, but it only made 30 horsepower. Second issue, fuel economy, just 33 miles per gallon, absolutely terrible for a 300cc bike. Third issue, insurance costs. Insurance companies didn't understand rotaries at all. They saw 294cc and thought it was equivalent to a 588cc piston bike, so they charged 4-liter bike insurance rates. Young riders couldn't afford it. Fourth issue, the styling. Some people genuinely loved it. Most people thought it looked like a moped with serious delusions of grandeur. Between 1974 and 1977, Hercules sold exactly 1,784 W2000s. They needed to sell 40 more per month just to break even. They didn't come close. Production ended in 1997, and the tooling was eventually sold to Norton. But here's the important thing to understand. The W2000 wasn't actually a bad bike. It was just the wrong bike at the wrong time for the wrong price. Number 3. Norton Classic and Commander. Here's where rotaries almost actually succeeded in the marketplace. Norton, the legendary British brand, was seriously struggling in the 1970s. The Japanese manufacturers were absolutely destroying them. They desperately needed something radical. And then we have David Garside, a BSA engineer who bought one of these Hercules W2000 engines and started seriously experimenting. He combined 2 rotors into one twin-rotor engine. By 1984, Norton had a working prototype, the Interpol 2, sold only to police and military forces. 85 horsepower, reliable, incredibly smooth. In 1987, they launched the Classic, the first civilian Norton rotary. Just 100 were actually built. Air-cooled twin rotor, 80 horsepower. Naked bike styling, silver and black paint scheme. It was reasonably light, it handled really well, it was genuinely fast, but it had some issues. Air cooling wasn't quite enough, the engine ran too hot. Overheat it and you'd completely cook the apex seals. So Norton added water cooling. The P52 Interpol and P53 Commander, radiator up front, 85 horsepower, much better cooling, more reliable overall. But the civilian models got seriously criticized. They used Yamaha wheels and suspension components, budget parts on what should be a premium bike. Norton fans weren't happy at all. Still, Norton kept developing the design. They built dedicated race bikes, the RCW 588, and this is where things get really interesting. Brian Crichton was a Norton employee who genuinely believed the rotary could be a race winner. Management didn't agree with him, so he built a race bike in his own time, evenings and weekends, working out of the caretaker's shed at the Norton factory. His masterstroke? An exhaust ejector system that nearly doubled the engine's power output. It also made it incredibly loud, but for racing purposes that didn't matter. In 1987, the prototype debuted at a club race at Darley Moor. It came third. Norton management finally paid serious attention. By 1989, the Norton Rotary was absolutely dominating British racing. Steve Spray and Trevor Nation won races all over the UK. The bikes wore black and gold John Player special livery. Crowds flocked to see them. But by 1994, the big manufacturers had finally had enough. They lobbied the racing organisers hard, and the Wankel engine was officially banned from British racing. The Norton Rotaries proved Wankels could actually work really well. They were fast, they were reliable, they won major races. Many owners report 200,000 miles on the original engine without major work, but the market didn't care enough. And when your racing advantage gets banned, there's no real reason to keep building. Number 2. Van Veen OCR 1000. Henk van Veen was a Dutch motorcycle importer and serious racer. In the early 1970s, he decided to build the ultimate superbike, a Wankel-powered machine that would completely embarrass everything else on the road. The Van Veen OCR 1000, OCR stood for oil-cooled rotor. It used a 996cc twin-rotor Komotor engine, the exact same engine Citroën used in their failed Birator car. Water-cooled casing, oil-cooled rotors made 100 horsepower. At a time when Kawasaki made 82 horsepower, that was absolutely huge. The bike had premium everything. Nico Baker designed frame, 42mm telescopic forks, Brembo brakes, Porsche designed gearbox, shaft drive. The build quality was absolutely impeccable. And it looked absolutely stunning, genuinely gorgeous, futuristic but classy at the same time. But here's where harsh reality hit hard. First problem. Weight, 700 pounds. That's insanely heavy for a 1970s superbike. Second problem, fuel economy, about 24 miles per gallon, and it burned a full litre of oil every 500 miles. Third problem, price, $15,000 in 1978. That's literally twice the cost of a BMW R100 RS. You could buy 2 top-spec bikes for that, or a Mercedes 350 SL Roadster. Fourth problem, and this is the absolute killer. Komotor, the engine supplier, went completely bankrupt. Citroën cancelled their entire rotary car program after serious technical problems. The GS Birator was a complete disaster. Citroën only built 874 of them before buying most of them back and literally crushing them. They didn't want to deal with spare parts or warranty claims. When Komotor shut down in 1980, Van Veen had absolutely no engine supply. Production stopped completely. Van Veen managed to build exactly 38 bikes between 1978 and 1981. Then it was completely over. Today, those 38 original bikes are worth over $100,000 each. Collectors absolutely loved them, but back then, they were an expensive curiosity that nobody could afford. And now to our number 1 pick. If the Hercules was the simple rotary design, the Suzuki RE5 was the hopelessly overcomplicated one that nearly destroyed a company. Suzuki genuinely saw the rotary as the definite future. They went all in with everything they had. They hired famous Italian designer Giorgetto Giugiaro to style it. They got astronaut Edgar Mitchell to personally endorse it. They flew motorcycle journalists to an entire week-long test ride event. This was supposed to be absolutely huge. The RE5 had a 497cc single-rotor liquid-cooled engine. It made 62 horsepower at 6,500 RPM. Pretty respectable for 1974. But Suzuki didn't just build a simple rotary bike. They built an actual spaceship. Water cooling system, oil cooling system, air-cooled exhaust system, double-walled exhaust pipes, CDI ignition with dual points backup, 3 completely separate oil reservoirs, 5 cables connected to the throttle assembly, 5 separate cables, and the styling. Oh man, the styling. The first-year models had a cylindrical instrument cluster that automatically rotated when you turned the key on. A protective shield raised up automatically to reveal the gauges underneath. The tail light was shaped like a cylinder too. It looked like something straight from a 1970s science fiction movie, which, to be completely fair, was exactly the point. But it was incredibly heavy, 573 pounds wet weight. Expensive too, $1,900 in 1975, when a Honda CB750 only cost $1,500. And seriously complicated too. If something broke, good luck finding any mechanic who actually understood rotaries. Also, fuel economy, about 28 miles per gallon, not great at all. The exhaust pipes ran so incredibly hot that Suzuki wrapped them in black heat shields. Why? Because they were absolutely terrified of product liability lawsuits from passengers burning their legs. That's how dangerously hot they ran. And here's the absolute killer. Suzuki built a whole new factory just to produce the RE5. They poured millions into development, marketing, and infrastructure. Then, basically nobody bought it. Between 1974 and 1976, Suzuki sold somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 RE5s total. They needed to sell way more just to break even on costs. The bike nearly bankrupted Suzuki completely. Seriously, the only thing that actually saved them was the GS750 4-cylinder and the GS400 twin. Those bikes were being developed at the same time as backup plans. Good thing too. Cycle World magazine tested one years later and called it expensive, overcomplicated, underpowered, and genuinely hideous. They ranked it one of the 10 worst motorcycles ever made. There's even a persistent rumor that Suzuki was so deeply embarrassed by the RE5 that they dumped all unsold bikes and spare parts into the ocean of Japan. Whether that's actually true or not, it shows how badly the brand wanted to completely forget this thing existed. The RE5 proved that throwing advanced technology at a fundamental problem doesn't automatically fix bad fundamentals. Rotaries are incredibly thirsty. They burn oil constantly. They have serious apex seal issues. No amount of fancy engineering really changes that. And when you bet your entire company on unproven technology, you better be right. Suzuki wasn't. So there you have it. 10 engines that tried to kill the piston, and every single one failed. Maybe someday electric motors will replace pistons for good, but until then, the internal combustion engine is still king. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe if you want more stories about motorcycles. Ride safe, and remember, sometimes the old ways are old because they work.